Alright, I want to do a video real quick on Star Wars, the state of Star Wars. As of, when is it now? January 19th, 2018. I want to do this video because a lot of people have been discussing Star Wars, particularly The Last Jedi, but, the future of Star Wars a little bit as well. And I wanted to do this because I've heard arguments on both sides, like, this was the best movie ever, anyone complaining about it is full of shit, or people who are very unsatisfied with it, which it seems there's a fair number as well. And I just wanted to do, initially I was I'm fine with not being anywhere on this. Then someone did this article, like, a lot of men are unhappy with Star Wars, and the answer was patriarchy. And I'm like, okay, I have to say something. And also part of this is I've seen a lot of reviews, and some of them by people I generally like their reviews or their videos, even if I don't agree with them. I like their points and so on. But some people hated it, some people loved it. And I just want to take a slightly different tack in that I want to just discuss why, not whether or not this movie is good or bad. I had 2 weeks ago, I had 6 nerds over at my house. A bunch of us were here, all of us had seen the movie, and it was, did everyone like, at some point we started talking about this movie. It's like, hey, did everyone like it? It's like everyone said, yeah, well, enjoyed the movie. And someone, I forget who, said something like, I don't see why people were complaining about it. Then everyone else did. Well, this is a problem, and there are a lot of forced contrivances. For example, and this didn't really make sense, and that wasn't very satisfying, and so on and so on and so on. And just on and on and on it went. So it's like, we all seem to like it, but we all seem to agree it wasn't a very good movie, objectively. I don't want to discuss that. What I'd like to discuss, just briefly, is not whether or not it's good or bad, and I'd like to also stay away from, well, if I did it, I would do this, or I would make Kylo Ren more powerful or less powerful, or give Rey this flaw. Or I want to get away from that. I think you can do any sort of story. What I just want to do is why someone might see Star Wars Jedi and not be satisfied with it. Not be satisfied with a particular scene or the movie in general. And just kind of approach it from that angle. Simply because I think that might go a long way in explaining why there's such a divide on this movie. Part of that is, well, just jumping into it, for this movie, it's not a bad movie. It's not a terrible movie by any means. It's enjoyable regardless. I mean, whether you say, this makes it a good movie, this makes it a bad movie, it's an enjoyable enough film. I stand by my review that while it is convoluted and kind of a mess, I think there's enough stuff that's cool in it that someone will see it and like what they see. They'll find something to latch onto that they enjoyed. That said, I think there are parts of this movie where, kind of jumping into this movie's a space opera. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable that you would go to see Star Wars and expect to see a space opera. Well, what is a space opera? What makes a space opera a space opera? And part of that is dramatic characters. Dynasties often play a big part of that, familial dynasties, really epic tragedies and marriages and true love and that sort of thing. Very over the top. And there are always going to be contrivances. Why is, the bad guy is Darth Vader or someone, and his son just happens to arrive at this because it's fate or whatever, destiny. A space opera is going to have a lot of contrivances like that. One complaint is these are kind of forced conflicts, forced contrivances where things happen and they don't need to, and they don't lead to anything satisfying. For example, pulling one out, the fact that Leia and purple hair, whatever her name, General Millennial or whatever, refuses to tell anyone what the plan is. The premise, that's unsatisfying. I'm not going to say good, bad, I do it differently. I'm going to say this. A scene like that, perfect example, is that there are certain expectations for the character. Like, we want the hotshot guy to be the hotshot guy and to be good at flying. We want this character who's a good fighter to be a good fighter. We want this brilliant strategist to be a brilliant strategist, and so on. There's an expectation there, and when seeing them meet those expectations, or some surprise where a character we didn't think was very good or had a lot to grow suddenly has some burst of inspiration or growth or what have you, that's satisfying to see. For that particular scene, it's you get that scene where the pilot guy is like, look, just tell me there is a plan, and they refuse to do so. General Purple Hair is just refuses to, and I guess it's so he could learn the important lesson of just shutting up and doing as you're told. Even if you like that for some reason, or you're cool with the message there or whatever, certainly you could see why people would be unsatisfied with that. I mean, the premise there is he's supposed to learn to be cool-headed or to think about other people or something, but it doesn't come across that way very well. It's not set up very good. It just sort of just leads you to believe that they just want him to do as he's told, shut up and be a soldier, and just trust whatever his leader says, and that's not what a resistance or a rebellion does. You question authority. And he did, in a very diplomatic way. Other scenes, like, obviously this is going to be extremely spoiler, so this is kind of my post-spoiler movie thing for Last Jedi. But a lot of scenes are unsatisfying in this film simply because it's a space opera. We're expecting a grandiose build-up. I mean, take the Emperor in the first movie. He barely shows up in the first trilogy. He's just there to be like this sort of personification of evil itself. He doesn't have to have a complicated backstory, neither does Snoke for that matter, but when the Emperor is ultimately killed, it's this huge, he's about to murder Luke Skywalker, our main hero, who's at this point has built himself up to be quite the Jedi Knight. Darth Vader kills him but is mortally wounded himself. When he dies, it's literally a crazy explosion of energy and evil magic. When you have a similar character built up in a similar way, like this is the big evil guy, this is the personification of everything that's wrong, that's pushing wickedness and wrongness, and in this case the First Order, to do wrong and to do evil stuff. That's our persona for it. It's a single person. When that person just gets cut in half in the second of 2 movies, and nothing really happens because it's... In other words, having the character at all, you build up that expectation, like, oh, this is going to be a big guy, and what is his backstory? What are we going to learn about him, or are we not going to learn about him? What's going to be mysterious? What evil thing is he going to do next? Or what are we going to, shake our fists at? This guy is so terrifying, or whatever he does. And then he just kind of dies, and everything about him means nothing. So who cares? And that's fine for a movie. That is not fine for a space opera. It is actually perfectly fine. It's something that could happen in a regular movie, but this isn't a regular movie. This is Star Wars. It was, once again, the expectation that this would be operatic, that it would be melodramatic, over the top, very unsubtle, is a reasonable expectation of this film. Having him just go out like that, for example, in the original trilogy, no one said, that was great the way Boba Fett just kind of died meaninglessly, quickly, and didn't get to do anything cool. I know Lucas didn't care for that character. The fans really loved him. I don't think anyone defends that decision to just, I hate that character. Let's just have him just throw him in the Sarlacc pit real quick. There's no defense of that. Likewise, just having the same thing happen to Snoke, a character you've built up the entire first movie. I mean, literally, we see him larger than life, This crazy scarred face. What is the deal with this guy? I mean, it invites questions, and then having us come to a point where he's just defeated and all of the questions we have about him are now meaningless is unsatisfactory. Once again, I'm not going to say good or bad. The third movie could be all sorts of ways to mitigate that or do it differently, but it doesn't matter if it does or not, because you had this melodramatic build-up, which is what we'd expect from a space opera, and then it leads nowhere. It just fizzles out. And that happens constantly in this film. Like Luke Skywalker, this is built up. This is our... For God's sake, we've been waiting literally a generation for this guy to do something amazing again, you know? And then it's like, nah, he does a thing, and it's a thing it is. You know, he does the projection thing, but it's like, that's all he does. He doesn't teach Rey anything. And there's another problem. Is that Rey doesn't change. And we expect that. We expect to see like kind of a Luke Skywalker moment of, Rey's really shitty at doing this or that or the other, and now she's learned at the right moment to be very good at it, or she learned some important lesson, or she tried really hard, or she started caring about something. There's really no development like that for this character at all. There's no Yoda saying, well, you just suck, you know, I don't even know if you're going to become a Jedi Knight. I mean, Yoda was extremely critical of Luke Skywalker, and we don't have anything like that. That would have been very satisfying. I still don't think that character is a Mary Sue, but I could see why people would be aren't feeling it. They aren't feeling connected to this character. It's not a human-like character. She's just very good at everything, and then she succeeds at everything. Hooray. There's no build-up. There's no conflict. Likewise, the thing with Snoke's, it's like she loses to Snoke's. Now, the scene after, where they do the crazy fight, that was an awesome scene. Like I said, I want to be clear about this. Everything I'm saying about this is not to rag on this film. I like this film. I'm just pointing out things that I can understand someone being unsatisfied with. I feel the same way myself. What's another one? The fact that Rey's not anyone's... that she's a no one. This is perfectly cool. That is actually a very interesting point for a regular movie. That is not a very good point for a space opera. For a space opera, one way to create this dramatic connection, once again, familial dynasties and so on, it's something we've been given in the entire freaking, even the prequels to more than a little extent, because that means that Luke Skywalker and everyone is descended from royalty. Luke Skywalker is a prince. I don't think anyone ever points that out, but he is. He just doesn't know it. He doesn't really find that out till it's kind of irrelevant. Sucks to be him. But with Rey, it's like, what is her mysterious origin? How is she connected? Oh, she's not. She's not connected to anything. She's just a nobody. And that's fine, and that's actually that's interesting in its own right. That could lead to all sorts of things where people doubt her or whatever, but it's not a melodramatic, it's not connected to some grand cycle, she's not connected to anything. So literally, she's just someone who came out of nowhere, who just has the Force for reasons, just because. Whereas, and the fight with Kylo Ren, I mean, it's a very cool fight, where Kylo Ren and her are fighting the Praetorian Guard, or whatever the hell they're called, the red armor guys. It's really awesome, and then they get to the end of it, and Kylo Ren's like, yeah, I'm totally willing to come to an agreement with you, but we have to do this, and she doesn't negotiate him away from him. She just says, hey, I can't join you because you want to kill a bunch of people. And then they go their separate ways, and the First Order does not change at all. It doesn't. It just goes on being an evil organization that still has the exact same goals. Everything is the same. You've just had this change of ownership where the big bad guy has just been killed pretty summarily without a lot of fanfare, and nothing has changed. That's not how you do a space opera. It's not. Once again, that's not that big build-up to something. That's, this is this big thing that's happening, and it really didn't matter. Nothing has really changed. So we're just going to continue to have one of our many, many climaxes, and let's talk about that briefly. So climaxes, the thing where Rey has a confrontation with Snoke is a climax. The John Boyega's character and Mary, or whatever her name is, get the guy, and they try to do their Ocean's 11 thing, and that comes to a thing, and that comes to nothing. Once again, it's a big setup for this big, how these side characters, who one character we've just been introduced to this movie, they do their kind of plot development, which I'd argue was once again not very satisfying, and they go to this big plan, and they have this. It's the build up for it's crazy. Like they're not telling us this plan. Our generals aren't telling us what to do. So we're going to do a secret thing. You go to the planet. We find out the secret thing about this guy. So you got to get this guy to go on the ship. It's crazy. And then the guy just betrays them, and that thing leads to nothing. Once again, these are fine elements, and handled properly. Whether, and I'm not going to say whether or not they have. Obviously, quite a few people think they haven't been handled properly. Other people say they have. I'm not debating that. I'm just saying you can see why that would be unsatisfactory. Why you don't get a big, surge of adrenaline after seeing this. It's like, this all led up to the guy betrayed us, and then we have to escape, and lots of people die. Oh, and the little soccer ball saves us by getting in a walker. And that's neither here nor there. Once again, it's just scene after scene of not having this incredible follow-through leading to a big revelation. There are no big revelations. There are no... there's nothing to lead up to it. This is supposed to be kind of copying Empire, I guess, sort of, thematically, but where Yoda says, you can learn a lot from failure, at which point these characters must be super educated because they fail constantly. Once again, that's fine for a movie. You could make an entire very good movie, a science fiction film, where the characters constantly fail at everything. That's not a very good space opera. And that's, if people are disappointed in this last Star Wars movie, it's because they were expecting a space opera. Once again, I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation. And this definitely didn't meet the prerequisites to be a dramatic space opera. But also I wanted to talk about the state of Star Wars. It's like at the end of it, virtually everyone dies. The Resistance all dies. There's no major villain to lead it forward. It's just Kylo Ren, who has been painted fairly sympathetically at this point. He was this close to joining forces with female protagonists. I can't be bothered to look it up right now. And it's like, he's the bad guy? He's the big bad guy, I suppose? He doesn't have some big grand plan. He just wants to get rid of them because he wants to kill the past. He doesn't have a plan. There's no big scheme. There's nothing. So after this film, why am I looking forward to the next one? What is the thing that's going to draw me into it, that's going to make me go, I really want to see the next film in this? And I don't think there is anything. And that's kind of where I got to this. Like, one of the things I heard lauded about this film was it was very different than Star Wars, but the off-year movies tend to be the really good, or at least the big opportunity for different films, and Rogue One I actually quite liked. It was very different than regular Star Wars, and no one who was connected to some big dynasty. It wasn't a space opera. It was a much grittier, dirtier, and more human. There's a lot of personal that's a good science fiction, but it's a very different kind. That's not the regular space opera type thing that we've seen from Star Wars. And that's cool. It was very good. I liked it. It was different. I understand why people wouldn't have the same expectation for this movie as they did Rogue One, the last film. They're different kinds of film, despite the fact that they're set in the same universe. So that's my thing. That's my spiel. I just wanted to run off on a tear on that real quick and see if I could get through this in one sitting.